We are back here with Veritas Live. I'm Demetrius Malbro, your host, and today we are talking about the impact of artificial intelligence in the healthcare industry. So why don't you tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because I'm always super excited to see where everyone is watching from around the world. So be sure to also submit your questions in the chat, and we are going to take a few of those questions in the chat as well later on during the show. Now, let's introduce our guest speakers. We have John, who's a technology theorist and president of NostaLab. Say hello, John.
Good day, everybody. I can't wait to jump in. This is such an exciting time. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And we also have Irfan, Director of eDiscovery Strategy, Product Management here at Veritas as well.
Thanks, Demetrius. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Happy to be back on Veritas Live again, joined with John.
All right. And a little bit of an icebreaker just to get things rolling, get the juices flowing. For you, let's see, who's first? John.
Okay.
What was the first or maybe even the last question that you posed to ChatGPT?
Wow. Okay. Let's see. So every morning I get up and I have a conversation with ChatGPT because I found that it's my new friend, and I'm like, let's learn, let's talk. So my engagement with it is a little freaky. My first prompt was like, tell me about health technology over the last 10 years. And I was amazed. It was really good. Then I said, okay, write a biography of John Nosta. And it was horrible. It gave me jobs I never had. It gave me college degrees that I'd like to have, but I don't. So that was my first engagement a long time. Today, it's a very different, cordial and friendly relationship.
Awesome. That is a little bit scary, John. And I'm really wondering what Irfan is going to say about what he's asked ChatGPT, maybe this morning or maybe even last night. I don't know.
Yeah, so I did ask this morning. So I'll mention the most recent one, and it applies to where we are today, and it has no excitement like John's. I said, what are the most neutral colors to wear on a live session on the web? And I went with as many neutral colors as I could in the camera. And I'm not too happy with the response, but we'll see if those colors work out as the session takes place.
Funny.
All right, I am loving the responses here, and also let's look to the chat window really quickly. And I'm seeing Canada, UAE, India, Cleveland, Bulgaria, Dublin, Texas. Man, we are all over the world here. So, question for the audience as well. So, similar question for you, which AI chatbot have you used, whether it's ChatGPT, Google Bard, Microsoft Bing AI, and also what did you ask it? So type that into the chat window and make sure that it is suitable for work. So no funny business there, all right? So let's go ahead and get started with this episode. Also, this episode will explore the possible future impact that ChatGPT will have within the healthcare industry, and also the potential impact to the compliance and governance landscape within hybrid cloud environments. So, Irfan, first question for you, and then I'm sure John will be willing to jump in. Also,
I'm ready to interrupt.
See, he's already interrupting. Question is, what do you see as the immediate and also future benefits of the possible integration of AI tools like ChatGPT within the healthcare industry?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually gonna pass this question to John first. John is the futurist. He's the one that predicts where this is going. We're playing good cop, bad cop here. And John, go ahead and pre-think away, and then I'll dive in and tell you what the compliance matters are.
It's good cop today, because we are at such a profound, interesting part in human history. I want you to think back, because I'm going to go not only off script, but I'm going to go off concept. Who who remembers the old TV commercial about V8? It was the guy would hit himself and say, I could have had a V8. Do you remember that? Right?
Yeah.
That captured the essence of GPT. Because what GPT does, it responds to the quintessential human dilemma, whether it be at work, whether it be at home, or whether it be on the wards in a clinical construct. And it's this: I wish I thought of that. That is the essence of what we're seeing today, because GPT provides a cognitive palette for human curation. So GPT gives me a selection of choices, many of which I have not or would not have thought of. That's number one. Two, even known. So I didn't know, like with the question about what are neutral colored clothes to wear, I didn't even know that cherry blossom mauve or, these colors existed. But GPT introduced me to that palette. And once that palette was afforded to me, I could leverage my cognitive prowess as a human to make better choices. And that's where we are. Because, look, the patient comes into the emergency room and, they have chest pain, or they have this pain, or that symptom. We as humans create a differential diagnosis or a laundry list of things. As long as that list has the right element in its selection process, I'm in good shape. So that's the magic of GPT. And I think it's fundamental and it's simple that GPT offers us a palette, a cognitive palette for human curation. I'm just going to push on that one more time. It's a palette, right? It's not a checklist. It's a palette. It's an artistic palette of color, of design, and of whimsy that allows us to incorporate into our workflow. So that's my sort of 30,000-foot grand view of what GPT is going to offer us. And that's only the beginning.
Okay, and I see you're getting really cozy with GPT because you have abbreviated the name to just GPT.
I just sometimes just G, or golly G, golly G, as I like to say,
or T. Irfan, what do you have to say about that? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the possibilities are endless, and John's very right. This is going to push us. I don't know if the palette has the defined colors, though. I think the palette is going to be unique, right? We may be defining the palette as we speak. And it was one thing to think that this type of generative artificial intelligence would impact the business workplace. And I know that's the topic that we're here to speak on today. But the usership of GPT is not limited to the businesses or the workspaces that we would be accustomed to. Schools are beginning to use it. Educational models are beginning to use it. And I said I would drop an interesting statistic in fact, which is that OpenAI's ChatGPT has the fastest usership to 100 million users of any platform ever. And to give you an example, they compare it to TikTok, which is, again, not something you would consider in the productivity space in the business world. Instagram, they compare it to Facebook, and then even Gmail. And the numbers are drastic. It's from 1 month of ChatGPT compared to 2.5 months for TikTok, to 5 months for Instagram, to 5 years for Gmail. And so it tells you not only has humanity progressed as it relates to implementing technology in their lives, but these types of technologies are going to be adopted rather quickly, and not just in a business productivity space.
Let me just push on that a little bit. Like, what is the nature of the exponential curve? Like we always banter exponential change and compare it to linear change and how that's fundamentally different. I think this may be another. It's like a second derivative of change, right? And to me, the interesting thing is that innovation and business transformation is being augmented or pushed forward by AI and GPT in of itself. So there's an adoption curve. There's all these things that happen in an enormous business world, but GPT seems to be impinging upon that, where it's a new curve. So maybe someone can coin a new phrase. And when you talked about that data, it was straight up, right? It was a vertical line. It just went straight up. I looked at it and says, well, hold on now. I'm a math geek, right? So what that means is that the slope or the change in y over the change in x, the change in x was 0. In other words, we had a 0 in the denominator.
Yeah.
Now, math geeks and kids in school say you can't do that. Well, when you have a 0 in the denominator, you've actually touched the hand of God, because you go to infinity. And I think that is a mathematical articulation of the profound essence of GPT today.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've heard that math is actually the first religion, but we're going to go there. We're not going to go there. On a similar thread, though, let's talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls to the benefits of AI in general, ChatGPT, Bard, etc. What about some of the ethics and privacy concerns that you see us running into? And John, maybe you want to lead us on this one.
Sure. Well, the pitfall, the fundamental pitfall for me, at least where we stand now with sort of the GPT 3.5, is that the data set stopped at 2021. Right. So it is not an accurate corpus data set. Now, we just spent 5 minutes talking about how fast things are changing. So if I can only go to 2021 to look, that's problematic. So that, number one, that's the biggest issue that I have, number one. Number two is that if I integrate my discussion with GPT, it becomes part of the public discourse. So if I put in my social security number, or I put in financial data or market data for a company, unless I activate what OpenAI has recently initiated, where I can stop the privacy issue, that's a dangerous window. We've seen that happen all the time. So, Irfan, I'm sure you can speak to that. That's a big issue.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of considerations. I know we're here to talk about healthcare, but I think that the overarching ethics and privacy has to be investigated. One is going to be the protection of your data and what you're placing into OpenAI, which is an open source technology. And people get a little frazzled at what that means. And really what you're doing is you're feeding information into a system that can then hold on to your information. Now, John has mentioned that as of late, OpenAI has changed the way, and you can opt out from the data that's being stored with OpenAI. But nonetheless, that how far back is that going to go? Is that going to be active for 30 days? You're going to want your previous searches in ChatGPT available as well. And so I think businesses are already looking at the offerings that are going to be available to them as it relates to using this type of technology. I also think that privacy is going to matter here, right? In that even if I'm putting it into a secure, private, cloud model training environment, what data am I putting in? Does the information that I'm putting in about a person know that I'm putting this data into this? Am I feeding it into that, and I'm going to be shared further on? And then I think one of the larger ethical considerations that is coming up now is bias. And it's not just related to healthcare. This could be related in any model that you're trying to derive for responses to come out. It's going to be, what is the information that you fed into it? Just as John mentioned, one of the biases is going to be, well, it's previous to 2022. It only applied to all the information that was fed into here from 2021. That itself will be a bias. The world has changed so much between 2021 and 2022, right? And that's just at the very cursory surface of where bias is going to be held. And you can think of all the different biases that could be trained into a model that we have to think about as it relates to race, as it relates to gender, and socioeconomic status. So biases is going to be another consideration we have to look at.
Yet as fearful we are about the integration of our personal or business data into a large language model, I can't wait to do it. Because that's I think where some of the magic lies. And from a healthcare perspective, if I can create a GPT me, where I include the last 10,000 emails, where I can include my health record, however the heck I extract it from the EHR, which is a problem in of itself. But if I can take that and create something that is unique to me, I have a wonderful platform where that can be integrated into health and wellness, maybe even integrated into a clinical trial as a digital twin. So it's a double-edged sword by putting your personal data into it. But I think we're going to see private LLMs that take the big corpus, add our stuff to it, and create that private thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, we have the data collectors for the ChatGPT me. We're all wearing watches, we're carrying around phones. We have the records to be able to capture that. No, Demetrius, I'm not wearing my watch today. But we really do have the data generation for that. I think that the question will become, is my data being protected? Is my data being secure? Is ransomware, when it comes in and attacks the cloud provider that I've chosen to have my data preserved in, what data will they be able to run away with? Is it being encrypted at the time that it's going from my watch into the cloud? These are going to be future considerations. As much as we run towards it, there will be an equal opposite response to it as well.
I agree.
And also, Irfan, I think ChatGPT may have gotten a hold of your audio because I hear an echo. So you might want to mute and unmute and ask ChatGPT to kind of lay off right now. Let's see if that.
Yeah, I was going to actually invite ChatGPT into the conversation as the fourth participant in Veritas Live, but I'll go ahead and mute after my response.
No problem at all. And I want to also get back to the audience's response to see how they are utilizing AI as well. And I have seen, let's see, a student, she said she's learning to code with ChatGPT. I also see create YouTube videos, and I also see some scary things about how scared they are using ChatGPT, and maybe it's going to take over the world with the Elon Musk mindset, etc. But we'll come back to that at the end to see who has the most exciting use case of ChatGPT, or maybe even Google Bard, or even Bing. All right. So, Irfan, I am hoping that ChatGPT has left your audio alone by now. And let's roll into another question here. John, how do you see compliance and governance standards changing because of the adoption of some of these AI tools?
Wow, that's it's an interesting question because it's changing so quickly that we're learning new things every day. Since we're in healthcare and we're kind of in the domain of pharma, let's say, I find that very interesting that we have fairly rigid guidance, compliance, governance within the pharmaceutical construct of, let's say, drug development. So in drug development, we have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We have phase 4 post-marketing surveillance, where we look at drugs to see if there are untoward reactions. It seems to me that there's a tremendous lesson to be learned about maybe the implementation of AI has a phased approach. Maybe there is a regulatory body, maybe there's phase 1 AI, phase 2, phase 3, where we can test things for bias, where we can prototype it. So I think that there's an interesting opportunity to leverage some of the wisdom of the pharmaceutical industry and even the financial industry to kind of unfold GPT and AI in a way that follows a methodology that already exists.
All right. And Irfan, let's see if you are just a solo AI bot right now. No ChatGPT with your audio. Let's see.
Yeah, how's it sounding now?
Nope, we still hear ChatGPT on the background.
Oh, wow.
But all right, it's fine. Go ahead.
Let me try muting again.
Wow, there's some great responses still coming in from the audience. I can't wait to choose the one that's the most exciting toward the end.
The Einstein bot.
Ooh.
I tell you, GPT is my teacher. I mean, it is, and just to push on that a little bit more, for me, we often talk about a very modern and contemporary perspective, but I want to harken back to the ancient philosophers a little bit. And I think that Voltaire, interestingly, said, judge a person not by the answers, but by their questions. And I think the ability to ask good questions is the sign of a good thinker. And that's the prompt. That is the essence of the prompt in GPT. And that's a very, very powerful tool to be able to ask smart questions. Now, here's the other side of that coin. And let's go back to the ancient Greeks on that. The Socratic method, or the Socratic dialogue, says that when we learn It's an iterative process. In other words, I ask you a question, and then you answer it, and then I ask a question, or you ask a question. And that back and forth iterative dynamic is the essence of learning. And you know what? That's exactly what we're seeing now with GPT. We're seeing an iterative dialogue. And the back and forth is where the friction is where the learning is. Now, interestingly, the ancient Greeks said writing is a death sentence for knowledge. Isn't that interesting? They said that we shouldn't teach people to write because the oral iterative dialogue is so powerful. And we're seeing that today, that GPT will be a death sentence to education and learning. No, not at all. It's a stepping stone forward, and it's very, very transformative.
Yeah, and to jump on that, John, I also think that there's been a lot of folks that have been worried about, are my jobs going to be removed, right? That's obviously one of the biggest concerns, and people's livelihood and employment matters. And so just as much as we think about that, we also think about how the knowledge worker evolves, right? How, now that we do have these types of technologies, what does compliance look like? What are knowledge workers that are going to be needed to train models in this technology? I think that just as much as we have this trade-off of maybe certain roles may not be a 3 or 4 person team where one person will be able to hand it based on the technology, we'll need those extra workers to train these technologies on the models. And so and knowledge workers will then need to be able to kind of source the data, remove the bias, be able to ultimately provide 2 points or multi points on a particular topic. So just as much as there's this concern about employment issues, we have the trade-off where we'll be building these new knowledge workers with these technologies now.
The cognitive sphere, the human dynamic, whatever that is growing. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not shrinking. The role of humanity in the world we live in is expanding. When the camera was introduced, the portrait artist didn't go away. We expand the dynamic of art. And I think we're going to see that exactly to your point, that the opportunities are going to abound. Will we mourn the blacksmith? Yeah, we will. We will. But I think that the evolution and the process forward is so much more exciting.
Yeah, I still mourn my TI-85 calculator that you could draw a nice curve with if you put in the right points. That's a technology of day yonder. But
I had the SR-71. The Texas Instrument, right? We are such geeks.
Yeah.
Oh, man, those old calculators. Yeah. SR-10 was my first one. And you know what? I saw something online. It showed teachers protesting that we should not allow students to use a calculator because they will not learn how to add and subtract, whatever it is. Very interesting and applicable to today.
All right, and I'm going to get back to the audience responses here, and I see one, I think the coolest one that I saw, which was the one that actually is assisting with writing code. So I'm curious a little bit more about how you're getting ChatGPT to help you with coding and what type of coding is it? Is it Python or whatever the case may be? And John or Irfan, I'm not sure if either one of you have any experience with using AI to maybe write code or do something so fancy from that perspective.
Yeah, the one caveat I'll give is that anybody's trying to add code to a product that they're making, just be careful putting it into OpenAI. Your intellectual property is not protected there. And so if you're using your models, if you're using a private source for your technology, go ahead and put your intellectual property there. As it relates to Veritas as a software company, we of course have developers that are constantly evolving our code, but to be able to use it as a QA, something that we could now provide a bit of quality control to remove some of the bug fixes. I had a neighbor the other day who was a software developer who mentioned to me that he's always had this one problem where a picture that would flash in the particular code, after the third picture, would give an error. And he was never able to resolve it. He put the code into ChatGPT and was able to resolve that software development issue. So, these opportunities are there. You can learn code. You could also generate code from
completely. My first aha moment was with a friend of mine who had a problem with code. And I said, well, let's try GPT, see if we can work it out. And he stood there dumbfounded. And he was like, I can't believe that did it. And to me, this is the whole advent of the multimodal area of GPT. It's not only text, it's code, it's photography. There's so many things. I saw a brief discussion about how they put in a picture of a bowl of pasta and GPT identified it and gave you the recipe of pasta bolognese. And apparently it worked quite well. So I think that, wow, it's just such an interesting time. And it is the basis, just one real quick point.
Sure.
The cheetah was the fastest animal in the world, okay? The cheetah. And humans could never run as fast as the cheetah until one thing happened, and that was the bicycle. The bicycle gave us a mechanical advantage. That mechanical advantage made us faster than the cheetah. GPT is a cognitive bicycle. GPT gives us a cognitive advantage the same way the bicycle, the gear, gives us a mechanical advantage. And I think it's a partner. It is a powerful tool that's going to push us into the next iteration of humanity.
And you know what, John, it's such a powerful tool. I remember reading yesterday, I think it was an employer, a small company CEO. He purchased ChatGPT, the subscription for each and every one of his employees. I think he's spending $2,400 a month to make sure that his team is using ChatGPT, which I thought was pretty awesome. So everyone out there, if you're listening, just take a cue from that, all right? And I want to make sure, before we begin to wrap up, we want to make sure that for those of you that want to hear more from John, prolific speaker, you can also find and follow him on Medium. He has tons of articles out there. And John, I know we have a couple of your specific blogs as well. And we're also going to call out here in a minute. So any final thoughts before we begin to just kind of close out, John?
Well, I think that we are at a functional Big Bang. We look for analogies, what's going on. And I believe that we are at that point in both societal, business, medical, that we are at a veritable cognitive explosion. And this is going to maybe reset, maybe transform, a lot of interesting words that we can put here. But I think that we are truly at the inflection point. And here's the key takeaway: the inflection point that we never saw coming. Who predicted this? We predicted AI, the emergence of AGI, some of these things as being gradual, but it fell upon us a few months ago. So it's a lesson learned.
Well, I think I predicted it, but I'm going to let Irfan go.
You got it.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think that guardrails have always been in place for technology, especially in the healthcare space. We've had to move data to the cloud. Guardrails have been put in place. Regulation isn't always bad. Our rules, even in the playground, there was rules, right? And so just as the playground of your school had rules, the world of AI now will have guardrails and rules. And so we have good regulations in place, and not just in the United States. We've seen in the EU with the transformation of GDPR, they're evaluating this data as well. So the guardrails are in place. Go and play, but know that the regulation will be on top of it as well.
Well said.
All right, and just one more response from the audience here, and specific to the question I asked about coding. So they use it for Python, JavaScript, Java, and C. So wow, that's pretty exciting stuff. So before we go, we also want to point you to a couple of different resources. You can also check out the links below. And we also have two of John's blogs to share here as well. There's one called Cognitive Velocity, GPT Power in an AI First World. And the second blog from John that's linked below is around rethinking the cognitive burden in medicine. Wow, that sounds interesting. So both of these make for really interesting reading. So I would encourage you to go and check them out. And also finally, Veritas published a white paper on 6 ways ransomware can hurt the healthcare sector. So be sure to check all of that out as well. And I really enjoyed this episode. I can talk about AI and ChatGPT all day long, but I want to thank everyone for being here. And join us for the next episode of Veritas Live on May 23rd. So until then, stay secure and back up often.